Erev Tov Chavrim. Good evening, friends. Good to see you guys this evening. Well, I guess I can't really see you guys, but you guys can see me. At any rate, I am trying to set the system here to where we can actually be on here daily, 8 p.m. Prague time, 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't know how well this is actually going to go as of yet, but you know, the reason for this, and I'll speak about this again at the end of the broadcast once everybody gets in here, is so that people have a kind of a set time of when we're on. So if you're in Australia, I do want to know kind of Australia, New Zealand, what time is it over there? It's a little after, of course, after 8 now here, about 8:30, I guess, or 8:20, something like that. But we want to get this around 8 o'clock. So at any rate there, just so I can kind of get a gauge if this is a decent time frame that works for people around the world. As I get into this, so let me just kind of share some things that are going on. Russia deploys advanced short-range air defense missile system in Syria. This, I guess, is kind of testing the water before the S-300 system that they've already promised to give the Syrian government, I guess, too, to kind of fill out to see how Israel is going to respond. You know, Russia does have a good relationship with Israel. And even though they have been very supportive of President Bashar al-Assad, they still have tried to maintain good relationships with Israel. And but that's becoming more and more tense with the situation where Israel at first didn't want Iran anywhere closer than 100 kilometers to their border. Now the Israeli authorities are saying they don't want Iran anywhere in Syria, period. But anyway, it says during a visit of Russian YouTube bloggers at an air base in Latvia were spotted on new Tor M2 fully automated surface-to-air missile system manufactured by the Almaz Antes is electronic mechanical plant Kupol. Forget me pronouncing Russian names. We'll have to get Yana to come on here and start sitting in the seat here to do the program here if we want to get these Russian names properly done. Speaking of which, let me go ahead and bring this out. We get this all the time. Never fail. Someone in the comments are going to say he's controlled by his Russian wife. Okay, come on, seriously. My Russian wife? If my wife is Russian, so is Ivanka Trump. Or not Ivanka Trump, but Melania Trump. Because they're both from the former Soviet Union. Yana is, as well as Milena, but neither one of them are Russian. Yana is Slovak, and I think Melena, where is she from? She's from, was it Slovenia or something like that? But anyway, neither one of them are Russian, although they probably both speak fluent Russian because under communism, which no doubt both of them despise, I know my wife despised communism, you were forced to learn Russian. So Yana does speak fluent Russian as a result of growing up under the Soviet Union. But as far as Russian, absolutely not. So anyway, moving on here, they moved in. Russia has deployed the advanced Tor M2 short-range air defense missile system in Syria after the U.S.-led missile strikes on the Syrian regime chemical weapons sites. A source in Russian Defense Ministry confirms the deployment of the Tor M2 systems and the Hamim base in the northwest province of Latvia, Syria. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the Syrians have got it, but Russia has vowed to send those defense missile systems into Syria. So we'll kind of have to see how that goes. I don't think it's going to go too well, but at any rate, vast underground network tunnels were uncovered in Douma. Locals were forced by terrorists to build them under threat of starvation. Served as a base for militants, contained stockpiles of machinery, vehicles, as well as chemical labs. And now here's what gets me. You're seeing this, and of course, let me back it up so you can see these network of tunnels in here. And I'll turn the volume down here just a little bit there, but
kilometers have been.
But as we can see on RT here, just miles of tunnels that were dug, very elaborate system that was dug underneath Douma in eastern Syria there. And it was forced labor. I mean, this really reminds me of the neo-Nazi forced concentration camps that happened in Europe And I mean, I've had many of my family members that were a part of that as well. So I'm fully aware of what goes on. And it's very troubling to see that this was happening in East Douma, or East Ghouta, and also in Douma, Syria, suburbs of Damascus. And what's even more troubling is the fact that these men, these military jihadists that were running these forced labor camps, are all supported by who? The Syrian government. I mean, sorry, not Syrian government. Get my brain is not working good today. By the U.S. And their allies. That's who supports these guys. And so, very troubling indeed to see that not just the fact of the network of tunnels, but the fact of how they were being built. So, anyway, getting into the also updated Syrian army punches its way forward into South Damascus, advance against ISIS from multiple directions. New front there. As they begin to push like this, I have a feeling it's not going to go over too well in the very near future. Someone, whether the U.S., France, Britain, whether it be Israel, they're going to do something to try to stop these gains here, because these are groups that the Syrian government is pushing against, are all supported by these different nations that I have mentioned here. Putin also gives a warning to the fleet USA and NATO after a Su-30 fighter jet destroyed a Syrian outdated warship applying the X-35 anti-ship cruise missile during maneuvers in the Mediterranean Sea. And as you can see here, let me see if we can blow this up. I just happened to catch this when I first come on here, and it was very interesting to watch this. They're targeting this outdated Syrian warship there. And buddy, that thing does some damage, which I'm sure the U.S. has the same type of technology as well. So as we know in Jeremiah chapter 49, trouble on the sea, and it cannot be quieted. Guys, listen, one thing I want to share with you here, and real quick before I do that, Michael D. also, Ukraine, the last 24 hours, 11 Ukrainian soldiers were wounded in Donbas, 8 in direct action, and 3 in combat-related injuries. Tell that to everyone who doesn't know that there is a war going on in Europe, an active and ruthless war. That battlefront in Ukraine is definitely heating up, and it's not going to slow down, not a single bit there. And, it's just a matter of time before we have an all-out war, and Russia's going to protect the East Ukrainian people. That's just all there is to it, or Crimea. And Petro Poroshenko is wanting to take back these areas here. He's vowed to do so. And this is something, guys, you got to really pay attention to as well, because Erdogan had met with Petro Poroshenko, and they spoke about a surprise war they were going to do. And of course, in that war, that was to take back Crimea and eastern Ukraine. So Russia, they might think that Turkey is their ally at this point, but they're not. It's only a matter of time before Turkey really shows their true colors and their true intentions on what's going on in the world. All right, let me kind of tell you guys something here. Demonic entities head one world religion. This is our Patreon site here that we have. The video that I pre-recorded today, you guys will get to see part of that here on YouTube. And I'm actually going to speak about that even now while we're here live. And because I think it's just that important. But one thing you won't see, you're not going to, I'm getting a little bit more cautious about when I go to finger pointing, you might call it, certain entities in the world and who they are and what they are. But I think I don't do quite as well when I'm live as I do when I pre-record, because I don't know, there's just something about when you're watching comments, scrolling up a page and talking at the same time, you just don't do very well. So, so nonetheless, it's kind of a distraction for my own brain there. So I tend to make more mistakes. But I want to share with you guys some of those insights. And of course, on Patreon, I go into more details. I really get into the details on Patreon about not only the demonic entities that are heading a one world religion, and that's more of a catchphrase, I guess you could say. It's not really when you really get into the depth of what's going on here, what I'm dealing with here is that it's some fascinating insights from the book of Jude that I just by God's grace discovered here the other day. And it lets me know that it has a lot to do in our days with the one world religion. So, so I cannot wait to share these things with you there. And I really got to kind of, let me see if I can actually move chats out of the way for myself, because I love you guys. I'd love to be able to see what you guys are saying. But for me, it's just, I just can't get my mind to focus like I should. Well, I don't know how to move it. I'll just try really hard to stay my mind on what I'm talking about here, guys. All right, let's get right into this here, because I think it's very, very serious. Go over here. We're going to pull up the Bible. Oh, actually, well, I will need the Old Testament as well. Let's go into the New Testament. And let me say something seriously. If you're watching right now, you hate the biblical stuff, you come to Israeli News Live to watch the news, can I encourage you, don't leave? What I'm going to tell you tonight is something that is going to shock even those that are not into biblical insights. They're not into prophetic things. And this is not so much a prophecy as it is just really revealing what's been going on for thousands of years. And so those of you that are not religiously inclined, you're more interested in just knowing the news updates, the things that we share there. I think you're going to find this interesting yourself, because it is very, very interesting. And when I spoke about this today on Patreon, of course, I go into a lot of details there that I probably will not do here, but I'm sure it would be a blessing to you if you want to check that out. And again, what I do, and I will air that actual interview here on YouTube, but you'll get about 30 minutes of it. There's about an extra 10 minutes of things that I go into on Patreon that I don't go into on here. Maybe in some of my older videos, you'll kind of get a general idea of that if you know about the way I believe anyway. But anyway, let's get right into it here. Jude starts out, he's writing his epistle, which is only one chapter. And as he starts off, he says in verse 3, when I gave all diligence to write unto you the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. All right. Again, listen, I can't stress this enough. If you're not into listening to biblical things, and that's normally when you check out of this live broadcast, you might want to stick around. Seriously. In fact, you might want to take and send some messages on Facebook and let people know they ought to be tuning in right about now, because I'm telling you, this is mind-blowing. We have, for example, I have on the video I did on the fallen angels imprisoned in Antarctica and still yet alive today. I forget exactly how the title goes there. It's getting close to 1 million views on there. And a lot of people are interested in this type of subject here, but very few have any idea that Jude, not only did he write about it, but he was trying to warn us of what's going on. All right. Now, verse 3, though, can be very contentious. And so I'm asking you to kind of bear with me. Like you, I have my preconceived ideas of what Jude has always been about from day one, just like you guys. When he speaks about the common salvation and then earnestly contending for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. I felt like, okay, the common salvation, we're saved and Jesus Christ, and we got to believe it, but we got to really contend for this faith. Right? That's the way I took it. Now, that may still be the correct way of looking at that particular verse. But as we get into this, if you really begin to look at every verse that I'm going to share with you in here, you're going to find out that there is a demonic movement that is still very much alive today. Very demonic movement, very much alive today. All right, and it's not changed. It's not changed at all. The common salvation, if you look at this in the Greek language, all right, I was looking at some of these words. It's koinos, which it can also mean a profane or a defiled salvation. And as I began to look at the context in which Jude was writing here, I began to realize that he may have implied here, when I gave all diligence to write unto you, in this case here, possibly the koinos, the defiled salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith, which is pistis, which is the moral truth, not just faith like you have faith in believing something, but it's that you earnestly contend for the moral truth that was once delivered unto the saints, which are the blameless. The Greek word used there is the blameless. And those things are really important that you pay attention to that wording there. Now let's look at why I say this, all right? There's a reason for this. For there are certain men, watch this now, crept in unaware, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation. Ungodly men, turning the grace of God into lasciviousness, all right? And denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, look at the antecedent then. Let's go back to verse 3. That's your antecedent. If you're looking at what's being said in verse 4, that you got these men that have crept in unaware, who are before ordained to this condemnation. Wait a minute. That, by the way, the word old there is from ancient times. These men come from ancient times and they're condemned already, and they have crept in amongst the apostles, or those that are believing of the apostles. So, oh, by the way, I'm trying to ignore comments, but I caught somebody said something about Bill Cosby. He was found guilty today. Yes, he's 80 years old. He was found guilty of the charges that were brought against him. If it says here, ungodly men turning the grace of our God unto lasciviousness, which is a lustful type of, actually, let's see, I've got the word in here. It's filthy. All right, they turn what? They're turning the grace of our God into an ungodly, filthy, lustful type of way of believing. Now it makes sense why he says, I gave all diligence to write unto you unto the common salvation. I'm wondering if what Jude was trying to say here, because the very word koinos can actually, seriously, it can actually mean, as I said here before, a profane or a defiled salvation. And then he's talking about that these men that have crept in, men of old, and what are they? They are turning the grace of God into a defilement. But you got to watch about these men that crept in. This is the key. How many of you guys know about reptilian, as they bring out these things here, these reptilian races, things of that nature? Now, I'm not saying per se reptilian races, but I'm going to tell you something here. These men that he's speaking about right here, that Jude is talking about, are descendants of the fallen angels. That's what this is. Now, bear with me, because you're going to find out that that's exactly what's being written in here about. It says, I will therefore put you in remembrance, though you once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, and afterward destroyed them that believe not. Again, like I said, you guys coming in here, you're not into the religious side of it. Stick around. Don't leave. Stick around, because you're going to want to know this yourself. So he talks about the time when Israel came out of Egypt, and afterwards, they were destroyed because they believed not. See, God's not going to destroy his own. But you have to remember, when the children of Israel left Egypt, they went out what? A mixed multitude. Now, generally, I've always assumed that when it said a mixed multitude, okay, though they had some Egyptians with them and maybe some other slave races that were there, that were, when I say slave races, in other words, the point being the Jews were in slavery in Egypt. They'd been there in slavery for quite some time, serving under the hand of Pharaoh's thugs. And there were other slaves there as well. And so I'm assuming, of course, they go out together with them. But the point is Jude is trying to make a point of something, and this is what you got to really pay attention to. All right. One, he speaks about these men that have crept in unaware after the apostles have already come, and apostles are still alive on the earth. And he said they've already snuck in there. And these are ungodly men turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness. Right? But they were men that were of that condemnation, ordained to condemnation. Which the ones that were actually ordained to condemnation were the fallen angels. Right? Okay, so now going into verse 6, and this is how you know that. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains unto darkness, unto the judgment of the great day. You see, it's starting to come together. Here you got these people that have crept into the church, and they're ungodly men, and they're ordained to condemnation. And now he's talking about the fallen angels. Notice too, when he says the angels which kept not their first estate, we know this is from Enoch, and this is the one place where in Jude he actually quotes Enoch. All right. And I've had many people write in comments. They say, well, Steve, it doesn't make sense because how could these women have sexual relationships with these angels, which were so huge? Right there's your answer. But left their own habitation. The word habitation is house in Greek. They left their type of body that they were living in and came down here, which perfectly goes in line with one of the apocryphal writings that I read, where it says that they were able to transform themselves to appear as if they were these women's husbands. They left their habitation. And some might argue, well, no, that's because they were up in heaven and they were given this domain there. But in the Greek there, the habitation is their house. And we are considered a house. Your body is a house or a temple of God. He hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness. So it's like, why does he bring this up? Why does Jude bring this up if it doesn't go along with everything you're seeing up here? All right? I write in you all diligence to write unto you the common salvation. It was needful for me to write unto you to exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. And that's interesting. The word saints here means blameless. Now you understand why he calls them blameless or saints, because why? He's going to get over here at verse 6 and he talks about these fallen angels that come down. They're not blameless. And then they also produced a generation of children, giants, that were never blameless. Now the point is, if this was going on back then, it's going on today. And that's what he's going to show you. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication. And if I'm not mistaken, the word used there is adultery. And going after strange flesh and set forth an example, suffering the vengeance of the eternal fire. I don't think that Jude is actually speaking when he says going after strange flesh, that he's really speaking as many consider it to be. It was a homosexual activity that was happening there. I think he's actually talking about what we would call today alien beings or, demons, right? Watch this though. Likewise also, these dreamers, now the word filthy is italicized, so we know in the actual Greek it's not there, so I'd just rather say it without it. Likewise also, these dreamers defiled the flesh, despise dominion and speak evil of dignities. How many times do you ever hear preachers speak about that and they talk about the dignities? You hate your rulers. Donald Trump was elected president and he was called of God, and you shouldn't despise your dignities. You shouldn't despise the ruler, right? No, it has nothing to do with that. These dreamers defile the flesh. Wait till I got it. I don't remember if it's in where I have some of these notes written down. Is it in Leviticus or Jeremiah or Deuteronomy 1? Remember when the Bible speaks about do not let your children pass through the fire to Molech? He talks about the dreamers and all that kind of stuff. You know? Defile the flesh, despise dominion, speak evil of dignities. That dignities, by the way, is not leaders. What the dignities are the glorious ones. The word in Greek is actually glory, but if you look at it just go to your in your column of your Bible, if you got the margin of your Bible where it gives you the definition of it, the dignities are literally speaking of the glorious ones, plural. Why? Again, watch what he says next, and it'll make sense why. Yet Michael the archangel would continue with the devil. He disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. Why does Jude suddenly throw this issue in there about Moses? It makes sense if you really understand what's going on here. Go back to verse 8. Likewise, also these dreamers defile the flesh. They're still bringing in these demonic beings. What does Jesus say in the Gospel of Matthew? There are more of the children of the devil than there are of the children of the righteous. I know I'm not quoting that exactly right. I actually, on Patreon, we actually pull that scripture up. More of them than there are of us. Jesus also said about many of the rulers of Israel in that day, you vipers. See? Reptilian race. This wasn't just a spiritual issue, friends. All right? Now, why does he bring up in verse 9 then about Moses? Because of this here. They speak evil of the glory ones. Why? I think, now this is a conjecture. I can't say I'm exactly right on this, but I believe it's speaking about your two witnesses. And this is why he brings up the issue about the body of Moses. Everybody believes that Elijah is coming back because we've got the prophecy of Malachi that says so. Right? Jesus said so as well. And Jude speaks about that. Not that he speaks about that here, but at the fact that, in other words, he was one of the apostles, so he was well aware of Moses and Elijah meeting with Jesus. He was well aware of Jesus saying, when they asked him the question, doesn't the scripture say that Elias must first come? And he said, truly, Elias shall first come and do what? And restore all things. This is what they hate. Who hates it? These demonic beings that are born on this earth every day, that have infiltrated in the religious circles. So, yes, Elijah does come back because Jesus said he would restore all things, but so does Moses. And they hate this issue. They speak evil of the glorious ones. Just like we see over in Psalm 83, where it says that they have taken counsel against thy hidden ones. There is such a hatred for the two witnesses. And they have hated it ever since. And even Michael, the archangel, is contending with the devil. He disputed about the body of Moses. You know why? Because they're still saying, oh, Moses can't come back. He already died. There's twofold reason for that, too, why Michael disputed with with Satan over the body of Moses. That's confusing for Satan, because Moses was just like the type of Christ, and Satan thought he won when he died, but the thing is, he didn't have a body. Yeah, he goes up on the rock, he dies, but he doesn't get the body, and he's supposed to be the angel of death. Why doesn't he get the body? So that's one of the reasons why he disputes over the body of Moses. Secondly, it's over this issue of the glorious ones, the dignities. They're going to return. And they hate that doctrine. That's what Jude is showing you. They hate that doctrine of the two witnesses coming. Why? Because they will expose this, as we call it today, alien deception. Think about what church is really into the alien baptismal thingy, and that might make bells start ringing. I don't know how that got up there, but all right. But these speak evil of these things which they know not, but what they know naturally as brute beast, and those things they corrupt themselves. And they do. Yeah, that's one of the most disputed doctrines, is the two witnesses. And yet the evidence is overwhelming for Moses and Elijah. I know there's still people who believe it's Enoch, and I'm not going to condemn that, but I can guarantee you one thing. Again, Jude is dealing with it, and it's all, Moses is the very one that is so disputed. Okay? Very disputed. Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily at the era of Balaam, and reward and perish in the gainsay of Korah. These are spots in your feast of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds and trees, whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars. Here it is again. To whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. And these wandering stars were in amongst the apostles then. Enoch also the seventh from Adam prophesied of these things, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all, to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These are the murmurers and complainers, walkers after their own lust, and their mouth speaketh great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. Oh, yeah. Look at all these great evangelists that are supporting the president right now. Oh, he's a believer. It's far more sinister than what you guys realize. Far more sinister. I shouldn't say you guys realize. Maybe many of you guys do get this. It's very troubling to me. And let me just share with you as a reminder. Leviticus is probably one of the best places for this here. Chapter 20. Let me just read it from verse 2. Moreover, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth of his seed unto Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. Now, most people think, oh, that's because they're burning him with sacrifices. Right? No. I also will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given of his seed unto Moloch, to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. What's the sanctuary? The true sanctuary, human heart. It's your body. You are the temple of God. And when you give over the seed to Moloch, remember those fallen angels, fallen stars, as Jude's been talking about? You profane the sanctuary. Why? Every seed must bring forth of its kind, according to Genesis. And you're hybriding these seeds. No wonder why we got so much hybrid food today. No wonder why Monsanto makes sure that you get nothing but hybrid seeds. You know why? These fallen beings, they thrive on hybrid foods. Then I will set my face against that man, against his family, and will cut him off, and all that they go astray after him to go astray, for after Moloch from among their people. And the soul that turneth into this ghost and into familiar spirits to go astray after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people. Sanctify yourselves, therefore, and be ye holy, for I am the Lord your God. and keep my statutes and do them. I am the Lord who sanctify you. All right? And many other things that we could probably bring out on this, but I don't want to get into every little issue here. Just wanted to share some of these insights with you. I'll actually load the video up that I did on this. Like I said, you'll see about 30 minutes of that. Patreon has about 40 minutes. Very interesting things that we go in over there. And, we're in a late hour, friends, very late hour. There's no time for playing around. And as we see things happening in the news today, it is obvious where we're at. I'm going to continue to go back over this issue here in Jude more and more because I'm searching it now, and I don't know how well I've conveyed this, who they are and what's really going on. But you're literally, to me, what Jude was showing here, just like it was before the flood, even after the flood, we were having the same issue. We had the Rephaim, we had the Nephilim, we had the Zamzamim, you had all these giants that were in the land. But it seems to me that they're not just giants. Yeah, they could be giants, but they're not always giants. And this is why Jesus made those comments. You're of your father the devil, and his works you'll do. Was it a mixing of the race? What was it? I don't have all those answers. I really don't. But to me, Jude really was uncovering something that is completely shocking, to say the least. And I think it goes really hand in hand with the messages that the Lord has given me before about Molech, how we spoke about these fallen angels in prison in Antarctica. And that, again, that's a conjecture. I don't say that with 100% authority. I don't know. But I do know one thing. When he said to earnestly contend for the faith, don't accept a one world religion. And I would be very careful even with the church I attend. Because in these systems are these demonic beings. The one world religion will be headed by a reptilian race individual. And they may look just like you or me. And I think this is what Jude was trying to bring out as well. They crept in unaware. That's how you know. This wasn't a situation like it was when Joshua came into the land of Israel and they were able to discern who was who, because these demonic beings were all giants. And they knew then because they were 18 feet tall or whatever the case was, and they knew, okay, these are not of God. These are these demonic beings. Jude said they have crept in unaware. And he tells you to earnestly contend for the faith of Jesus Christ. And don't accept a common salvation. Because in that word that they're using there, if I'm correct in what I'm saying here, that common salvation, it could be implying that is as the very word koinos is, it can also mean profane, defiled, or unholy. When you take the entire chapter in context of what's being said, and although it seems like Jude is jumping from one issue to another, he's not. He's really not going from one thing to another. He is actually staying on target. He goes to that common salvation to tell you to earnestly contend for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. And then what does he do? Certain men crept in unaware, who were before of old ordained to condemnation. He's letting you know that, because the ones that were ordained to condemnation were those fallen angels that defiled themselves with the women and came down. And believe me, that doesn't mean it's bad for a man to be married or to have a wife. It was defilement because their estate was not to have wives on earth. And they broke the commandment of God. And clearly, they came down and transformed themselves. Not that they were giants, but the women that birthed the children birthed giants. Now, some of the apocryphal works say that they actually died in childbirth. I don't know if that's really correct or not. But, then he says, I'll put you in remembrance, though you once knew this. So I guess the apostles knew a lot. Of course, they had to have known a lot more than what we know today. Look at Qumran, all the scrolls that were hidden there. And still, they were stolen. I can't tell you here why, but they were stolen. Many of those scrolls were stolen, so you would not know anything. But that's why they hate the dignities, the glorious ones. Because let me tell you something. I'll tell you, it doesn't matter if it's the Vatican or who it is. Hide those scrolls if you want to. God is sending those two witnesses, those dignities, those glorious ones. And they're going to tell us. They're going to tell us what you hid. And that's what you're afraid of. Why? Because you're not of this world. You have crept in unaware. And that's what's so slick about this even today. Many of them, they're wearing suits. As Jesus said, the hireling doesn't care about the sheep. He's only one that is there for the money. When you see preachers, that's the only thing they're interested in is money, then you got a hireling. And there's a good chance that he might even be part of that serpent race. I call it a serpent race. I don't know if that's the right terminology. I say that because we hear so much, about the reptilians. They say they shapeshift and stuff like that. Hey, I don't know. I do know I've seen a vision of that they have that ability to do so. But I can't say I'm just not studied in those areas as much. But the angels which kept not their first estate. See, he goes right into that. And I know I'm reviewing this again, guys, but I just feel like I want it to really sink in, all right? And even Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner giving themselves over to fornication, going after strange flesh. Now I'm not saying that they didn't have, that in Sodom, they weren't doing homosexual activity. Sure they were. We know that. The Bible plainly says that. But in this part here, they were going after strange flesh. This is telling us something else they were doing. Okay? Something else. Likewise, also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh. Again, everything is about defiling the flesh. What are they talking about, defiling the flesh? This is not a homosexual issue here. Even if you look in there, the dreamers, the necromancers that speaks about over in where's that at? I think I've got that written down here. Let me just pull it up real quick. Leviticus 20:22. I think that would really be. I don't know if that's it or not. Let me try Deuteronomy 18:20. I'll go down to 22 real quick. So I'm already in chapter 20. Okay, no, it's not there. Let me jump over, guys, real quick here to Deuteronomy 18. Because Deuteronomy 18, I think, is where it's at. And what verse do I have on here? Verse 10. When you come into the land the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, one that useth divination, a soothsayer, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or one that consulteth the ghost, or a familiar spirit, or a necromancer. All right? There's another one, I forget where it's at, where it speaks about they use dreamers. In other words, it was one of the ways that they used to get over there. Now, here's what's interesting. Do you know the enchanter, if I'm not mistaken, let me just look real quick over here. I'll read it in Hebrew real fast. Yes, right here. Umenachash. Oh, sorry, you guys are not seeing what I'm saying. I guess you are, but where is it at over here? Here we go, right here. Umenachash, and from the enchanter, or literally nachash is the word for serpent. Now, this is just blow your mind away. Do you think that he was actually speaking about reptilian race people, the enchanter? I don't know. I mean, the word enchanter is literally nachash. There's no difference. So, or an enchanter, no, or from a serpent or a sorcerer. I mean, this is just weird. I don't know. But the point is, guys, it's a very serious hour. Yet Michael, the archangel, went continuing with the devil, disputed about the body of Moses. What's that all about? Well, that's why. It's because right here, after he says, likewise also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, they despise what? Dominion. And wait a minute, I think I wrote something about that on here. No, it wasn't. They despise dominion and speak evil of the dignities. The dominion, of course, because God has not exalted Moses and Elijah, but because they are coming back for the very purpose. They despise that realm that they hold. And that's why Michael he disputed with Satan over the body of Moses. I've kept you guys too long. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Appreciate you so much. Do pray for my wife as well. Like I said the other day, she is headed back to the U.S. For a couple of weeks here. We got to get her back in a heavier vitamin C than what she's taking here. She doesn't take near as much as she does there. And she's got to meet back with her doctors as well, because I know they do want her to do 9 more months of that. And we appreciate those of you that are wanting to support this ministry as well. It does help. It's a tremendous lot of work that we're trying to do. We've been trying to also put together something to try to reach out to a peace delegation, I should say. Trying to put together a peace delegation that might try to help bridge a gap there with what's happening in the Middle East. I can't say much about that other than that. I don't know if that will ever come to fruition. I know biblical prophecy is going to fulfill regardless. I understand that. But at the same time, we want to do our part in standing for what's truth in this day and age that we're living in, especially in a world that there's so much ungodliness. Which, speaking of ungodliness, think about it. Is this really the Spirit of Christ to be warring? Is it really the Spirit of Christ for us to go out there and back the annihilation of another nation? Is it the Spirit of Christ? Even with our Israeli leaders, you have to understand, I support Israel. Israel is 12 tribes. Israel is a people. Israel is not just the Israeli government. I'm very concerned that Israel has been hijacked by the cabal, by the elite of this world. They have stolen our identity, and they are willing to go to war and try to just, I really don't understand what's going on. I really don't. I'm kind of troubled with some of these things. I'm going to do some deep study about this and some prayer about this. You guys pray for me. I'm really wanting to get an answer from the Lord to try to understand what's going on. Where are we headed to next? We see so much biblical prophecy being fulfilled right now, but where are we headed next? And I think Jude right here was a shocking reminder. And then also what's coming next. Jude spoke about those 10,000 of his saints coming to bring judgment. That's not going to be the Israeli army either, friends. I'm Steve Benoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, shalom. Don't forget to thumbs up the video, by the way, too. And if you do want to support the ministry, just check us out, IsraeliNewsLive.org. And those that have trouble there, the next video I'll be loading, which is also about the same subject. Our address is on there in Florida. And go be a part with Patreon. That's another way as well. God bless you. Shalom.